Hello, it's Randi Rhodes. Here's a clip from our show, and go to randyrhodes.com for the whole thing and a podcast. Buy a stinking podcast.
Mary had a little man.
The fall. We believe that all men are created equal.
To the magnificent mosaic that is America.
From radio beacon to radio beacon. I have a dream today. Change has come to America.
Believe me.
Knock, knock. Who's there?
It's a figment of your imagination.
Randi Rhodes Show.
Turn up your mind.
The wedge, George Bush Sr., who talked about Willie Horton, that portrait of him, the horrific picture of him they put all over the place. Reagan talking about young bucks, talking about welfare queens. Bill Clinton with Sister Souljah, and these little nuanced things like people who work hard and play by the rules. It seems like that wedge is very useful politically to get white voters to say, yeah, I'm with them, I'm not with the others.
Well, without getting into all those specifics, as you know very, very well, American politics has been defined since the Brown decision, and even before, really, but particularly since May 1954, by an attempt by politicians to put poor African Americans and brown Americans and poor white Americans pointing at each other instead of pointing up.
Now, what do I always tell you? Thank you, John Meacham, who is a great historian. What have I always said to you? I have always told you, don't look down. That is not where your problem is coming from. Your problem is coming from on high. Your problem is coming from the elite and the powerful. Your problem is coming from selfish, greedy men and politicians like Donald Trump. It is so completely predictable that Donald Trump would use the race wedge in such an overt manner so that he can pit poor whites against poor people of color and have us point at each other instead of pointing up where it's coming from. The tax cut itself, which was really the only piece of legislation that Donald Trump was able to pass. It really was the only thing that Mitch McConnell in the Senate was interested in doing, that and packing the courts with people who literally testified out loud under oath that they're not sure if Brown versus the Board of Education, which desegregated our schools, was rightly decided. Okay, we have people that have been confirmed by Mitch McConnell. Obviously, Acosta was confirmed by Mitch McConnell, who literally covered for a pedophile. Okay, and we have judges now sitting on the bench in high courts, district courts, appellate courts, who honestly cannot tell you that they think that Brown versus the Board of Education was rightly decided. They still think that that was a wrong decision by the Supreme Court. I mean, this is all over racism. Now, the Willie Horton thing and the Jesse Helms, the white hands commercial, you know, where the white hands are crumpling up a job application because it went to a black guy. I mean, that was the dog whistle. This here stuff, this is overt, in your face trashing of 100 million Americans, 100 million of us, 100 million Americans are black and brown. 100 million, a third of our country. And he is literally telling there's a third of our country that's black and brown. There's a third of our country that understands that. And then there's a third of our country who hates it. They hate everything about our country. They hate the fact that this country was founded on a place that you could go to get away from religious and political persecution. Okay, that is what America is. That is why Lady Liberty stands in the harbor. It is what we fight for. It is why we die. And Donald Trump hates every bit of it. Every bit of it. If it weren't for the population that I just told you about, the 2/3 of this country that are decent, hardworking, brilliant people who have propelled our economic, political, scientific, cultural, artistic, technological progress as a people in a melting pot, if it wasn't for all of that diversity that adds the amount of businesses in this country that are run by immigrants, that are run by first generation Americans, it is astronomical. astronomical how many entrepreneurs in this country are immigrants. People who started these massive technology companies. People who are, incredibly gifted. Contributing to our... If it wasn't for that, America would just be some also ran. It wouldn't be what it is. Well, Donald Trump hates that. He hates everything about that. And so he's peeling off the 1/3 of America who is still not able to get ahead, who are still suffering, who are still questioning how it all ended up this way for them, by telling them to look down. Instead of looking at him and his ilk and the people like him who play this game, who run this Ponzi scheme, whose only accomplishment was to transfer the little bit of wealth that some of us in the middle class had to the very richest through our tax code, which is the greatest heist in the history of the world, is always accomplished through our tax code. Whenever money is being stolen from you and given to somebody else, it's being done through our tax code. Whenever land is being stolen, it's being stolen by county clerks. It's being stolen by the people who keep the books. They'll write you down as not having paid your taxes, even if you paid your taxes. It's always through the tax system. That's how they stole all kinds of land, hundreds of thousands of acres, if not millions of acres, from African-American farmers. It's still going on today. Everything bad, everything devious, everything mischievous, everything ugly, everything untoward, every stolen thing, every stolen cent, it's all being done through the tax code. Republicans have always done this since the 50s. It's how they steal. Reconstruction, Andrew Johnson, that was the president during Reconstruction, who went about stealing every African American who was working land. Each generation of new Americans, every generation of new Americans contributes to the triumph of America. And yet he can't stand that about us. But it's just a fact. And it's not a zero-sum game. It's not that there's just, one pool of money and it's either going to go to white people or black and brown people. No, it's a pool of money that's all in the hands of very wealthy, rich, connected swamp creatures. Look up, everybody. Don't look down, because that's not where your troubles are coming from. I was so grateful to hear John Meacham say out loud, this is an old technique that pits poor whites against poor black and brown and tells them, point at each other, blame each other, while they steal everything. And now they're stealing public lands and the crystal clear drinking water and you name it, water. Everything. Believe me, entrepreneurs and brown people and Korean people in Queens and Flushing, and they're not stealing from you. The Koch brothers are stealing from you. Donald Trump is stealing from you. All Donald Trump's friends are stealing. Wait till you find out how Jeffrey Epstein made his money. I can't wait to find out, because nobody knows. But I will tell you this, behind every great fortune in America, there's a great crime. Always, always a great crime. And it wasn't done to you by some other poor person. Go to RandiRhodes.com for the whole thing and a podcast. Buy a stinking podcast.